Kreations. Today we're going to be doing our murder mystery quilt, The Murder of the Sphinx. This is block 6 called The Tomb. Hopefully you can read that. I got a fan blowing on me because it's pretty hot. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you this fabric here. And I got one piece that's hanging over a little bit, but just to give you the gist of it, I gotta say I love these fabrics and the sizes of these blocks. So let's get over here to the sewing machine and let's get started. To begin with, they want H3 and H4 put together. So this is H4, the solid color, and it's smaller than the H3, but when we open it up, this is going to be on the bottom left and this will be across the top. So make sure you pin it correctly. So go ahead and pin it and then flip it over if you want to make sure that you got it right. Let me turn it. When it's finished, it will look like this. So I have this pinned and I'm going to sew on the shorter piece. You probably hear that fan blowing over there. It's pretty hot, but I don't have my air conditioner in yet. So I've got the fan blowing on me. So just take your time. This is a 1/4 inch, just like always, nothing's changed. The reason I've got so many pins is that the top wants to come to the left of my bottom, so it wants to slide on here. And you want to make sure that your seams are matching. Now you want to press towards this. In my case, it's going to be the solid fabric, so your seam is going down. Now, the next directions on this project is telling us that it wants the length of this to be 21.5 inches. Okay, so I took my long ruler, I went 21.5 inches. This is what's left over. Now they want us to mark in the corner, so I have my pen here. And what you're doing is you're marking it just like this so that you know where it's at. So it's a 1/2 inch between here and here. So I put a little mark right there where my ruler's at, which you can barely see, but there you can see it right there. And then it's telling us to take our ruler and we're going to put our pinpoint down here, right here, and we're going to mark it from there all the way up to here, because we're going to be cutting off this excess. Since I don't have, as you know, the longest ruler I've got is a 24.5. So I put it up here because we're going to mark it. There's my corner right there. And then when I came down here and I ran out of ruler, I put this little ruler up against it to represent the corner there. So that's how I'm going to mark it. Alright, so we're going to take our W5, and we have 2 of them, and we're going to sew these 2 together. We have a shorter one and a longer one. We're going to fold them over and we're going to put a seam, so they end up being 7 3/4 by 32 inches in length when they're put together. Let's sew them together. For the individual that asked me about these sticks and what would you use them for, it is asking us to take this seam and to lay it open and to iron it. So what I would do is I would take this little stick, and Yvette's husband makes these. So if you'd like to buy one, I'm sure that you can purchase one from her. You put this on the stick. I'm going to see if I can put my camera down. Hold on one second. So you take this stick and you put it down the seam. You take your iron, and it can be any size iron. It can be a little one. And you're opening the seam. You're pressing it open. And then you're not creating any other types of seam. In other words, by pushing it down, sometimes you'll get a mark going all the way down, but this really does give it a flat seam because you're just focusing on the seam. You're not focusing on the right or the left hand side of the fabric. And as you can see, let me get, well, you can even see it in this picture right here. Let me get a little closer. Whoops. How straight and tight that seam is right there by using that stick. It's totally different than using the ironing board, because the ironing board has give. Even this wool mat, though it's thick, it still has a give to it when you iron. But this doesn't, because it's a piece of wood in there. I hope that explained a little bit for some people that don't know when I use these sticks, or what would be a good reason to purchase one of these. So I went in and I attached 1 and 2, W1 and 2, W3 and 4, so I can sew these 2 sets and then sew them together to make the 1 unit. And let me go ahead and continue with the story. So Kitty took the train to Luxor. That's where she was going to find out the truth about this tomb. So she gets in there and they get unloaded. Let me get to the tail end of this. Okay. And Mary Jane. So she starts asking a question, because, you know, she's the one that's doing all the videotaping and all that. So she asked her what kind of answers what she's looking for. And she said that the main answer was to find out whether the artifacts that were found in this tomb are legitimate or not. And then why was the locust, which is what she found underneath that lid, first off, why was it like that? And why did the guy have a tattoo on his body of it? I think I'm getting a little bit, nope, maybe not. Okay, I thought my 1/4 inch was getting off on me here. And she said that was the main thing. So they were going through the excavation. So they go ahead, they get a van to the excavation. They get there and she is introduced to, well, the guy that drove them there was Amin, and then he introduced her to Miss Asfor, and Miss Asfor said that things weren't going good, because Kitty could tell by her face, and had asked her, what's up, you know, what's going on, is everything okay? And she said no, and she kind of laughed about it, and she goes, well, what do you mean it's not okay? And she goes, well, I hate to say this, but she says, go ahead and come on. And she was like all defeated, her gesturing and everything. You could tell something was really wrong. She said that she's going to let Saeed, which is that guy that she went to school with. Remember, they met up there? Well, anyway, so she comes to the excavation, and they're looking at it. And she looks up and she sees this guy. This is the one that was her friend from the graduate school. And so he looked up, and you can tell that something was up with him also. And then she goes, well, what's going on? And he said that the thing had filled in. And she goes, well, I don't understand what you mean. He goes, well, we were here till 3 or 4 in the morning. We put the site to bed. And she goes, you mean you sealed it up? And he goes, yeah, that's what most of the sites that are in that area, that's what they do. They got these huge metal doors and grates. They cover the entire opening, because you don't want somebody to get in there and mess around. You know, if some kids wandered, you could get hurt. So then he said that he came back today, which was like an hour ago, before Kitty showed up, and when he went to open the gate and pull back the door, the tomb was filled in. And she goes, now Mary Jane, remember, she's filming all of this, so she zooms in on it, and it's like a pile of dirt and rubble and all that kind of stuff. And she goes, she goes, well, is it like an accident? Because she's looking at him thinking, you know, because these things happen, you get cave-ins because of all the excavation and everything. And he goes, well, it looks like it would collapse, but there's no way. He says, because the supports for this were actually found down the road. So right there, you know that thing has been sabotaged. Now, he did say, or he questioned her actually, because when she come up first, he said, I heard that the man was dead, the man that was in the van. And he goes, is this true? And she goes, yeah, I'm afraid he is. And he goes, well, the rumor is that he was murdered. And she goes, yes, that's true too. He was murdered, but they don't know the whole reason or anything like that. So that's why she came out here to try to find some answers. Well, anyway, he says, exactly, we've been sabotaged. She goes, and what about the inscription? And he goes, behind at least 6 meters of rock. So all of them together joined in and started the excavation. So they started moving the rock, the rubble, the dirt, basketfuls, everybody, even including that Dr. asked for at the very beginning of it. So they spent all day there, and Kitty was a little upset because she's got a deadline, very tight deadline, to get it all done. And they made little progress, but you know, that's a setback that happens. So she's thinking that someone really does not want them to get into this tomb any further. So there is something in there. Now that just makes Kitty even more determined to find out what it is. So the end of the work day, they were covered, of course, with dirt and grease and grime and whatever else she'd come up with. But anyway, they all went back to their, in this case, Kitty and Mary Jane, they went back to the hotel, which was a very fancy place that they got. And they got cleaned up, and Kitty went down to the bar. So after Kitty had a drink, had a little bit to eat, and the bartender asked her if she wanted more to drink, she went ahead and took another one, and then she was giggling, and so she realized she'd had one too many. So she quit drinking, went outside, and while she's outside, she was thinking to herself, and this guy, the bartender, his name, or actually they called him Why Not, and she said he said something, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it, or she saw something, but she felt kind of troubled when she was outside, like she couldn't shake it, okay? And she thought, well, maybe it's just the heat because it's so darn hot out there. She was probably just dehydrated, so along with that and being exhausted. But she knew she wasn't right. She knew she wasn't. She thinks something's up based on what she saw or heard, but she can't put the two and two together. I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that she's exhausted and hasn't had any decent sleep since having to come there and then had to do all that excavation, but that's just my opinion. So let me go ahead and put these two together. Now remember, the last time when we did the blue strip, we had to take that and we went down with it. So when we're doing these strips, which is the first ones, or the brown ones, excuse me, well, mine are brown, I don't know what your colors are, we're doing the opposite direction. So we're going upward with them. This way they're going to meet, because this is like half square triangles. One half went down, the other half's going up so they can meet. And then we're going to end up marking that brown fabric, the W fabric. Mine is brown, but it's called the W. That's going to have to be marked again for all of this to match up. Coming to the end of this strip. There we go. Let's take this off and iron it. So we marked this brown just like we did the blue and this, same way. Here's the directions right here. Okay, that's how we marked it so that we could cover it, because I pinned it all the way along there. And see, that's what we're going to do next. Alright, now we're going to sew this unit together. Keep in mind, if it doesn't turn out the correct size, you can always add to it if it's too small. You can always cut it down if it's too big. Okay, so let's see if we can get going here. Whoop, bobbin thread's empty. Guess we're going to have to change that out first. Alright, let's start this again. Alright, here we go. And now we're just going to be following the line because we do not know exactly where our 1/4 inch is. When you get ready to do your trimming, you want to flip this over, because you want this with the wrong side that you just put your brown on, or your W's, up so that you can see what you're doing here as you trim this off. Here's my excess I'm trimming off. And then just turn this right here and take this little corner off, this little piece right here, just like that. And then this is what you'll end up with, like that. At least this is what I'm ending up with. I don't know what everybody else is ending up with, but that's my half right there. And it might be wrong because I've got an edge sticking out, so I'll have to look and see. So when you're cutting this out, pay attention to the directions And when it comes time to pin it, you'll have this piece of the fabric marked, and what I do is I just stick my pin in there and stick it in here to match it up, and I do it all the way down here. So I just take the next one, stick it in there. If I can see there we go. My line is pretty light with my sewing machine here. And I've got a 1/4 inch left over there. There we go. Just make sure it's tight enough, that's all. I don't trust myself that I gave myself a 1/4 inch. I still go ahead and pin it just to make sure, because if I don't get it tight enough, then I gotta come back because I don't want it to be lacking. I will sew it. I'll show it to you when I get done pinning it. Here, I need to stand up and do it at my table. It's a lot easier. An idea what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is pulling this tight, but be careful not to stretch it. Putting my pin in, looking to see if I went on the line. I did. I'm doing the same thing until I come to the end of it. It just takes time. I know y'all probably can't even see that line on that dark fabric. And then when I did it here, this is actually the one that's closest to the edge is my actual pinning line. There we go. And then just continue all the way down. And if you got to go sideways on it, go sideways on it. Whatever it takes. If you have to do it like that, that's fine, because you can pull it out as you come to it. This is when you got to really trust your ruler, because boy, I tell you, along the way of making this, it did not look like it was cut out right. And I was really doubting myself. At this point, it's looking good right now, but I'm still not sure until I get it cut. Like I said, if it turns out too small, you can always add fabric to it. All right, let's take it over here and see. Unless we're trimming, the bottom is lacking, so I'm either lacking here or lacking here, preferably. I mean, I think it's this here, but I'm not sure because I don't know what it ends up being, so we'll deal with that when I come to it. No reason to panic. You can always fix it. It's fabric. Keep that in mind. You can always add and subtract. Even if it was a different color that I had to add, it wouldn't make any difference. It still would look okay. Nobody's going to know that that's not correct. Because maybe you did do that on purpose. We're not going to know. Let's take it now and open. I finished sewing that block. It did not turn out right. So I am literally ad-libbing this square. So this is what I'm doing. I have repinned it because it did not line up. It didn't even make the mark or how much needed to be in a specific spot. So I have laid it out, tried to line up the one strip with the other strip, and then I had to move it down some. So I'm pretty sure it will not come out the correct size. So I will end up adding to it. But I will not add to it or anything until it's time to put it together. That's when I'll change it and do whatever I need to do, which is necessary. Because I'll just park all my fabrics. I'll just leave them until I've got this together. And then whatever I need, because you know I did run out of that one color. And if I need that color, I've got to ad-lib and put something else in its place anyway, because they don't have that on the market. That was an old fabric. Alrighty, so here is the ending of my video. I actually was taping while I was sewing and my camera died. So here you can see the bottom didn't turn out correctly. It is not, I think it's supposed to be 22 and a half. I don't have my paperwork with me, but it's not that size, so I will fix it when I put it together. Just letting you know that I did finish it up. And I will see you guys next time. And this is actually the June block, although it has come out in July. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.